Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, I've got an update for you about Prentendo. Now, we talked about Prentendo yesterday, and for those who may not be aware, Prentendo is a free and open source replacement for Wii U and 3DS servers. And in yesterday's video, we talked about how 1,300 people were banned from Prentendo. So Prentendo reached out to me and provided some, I don't want to say inside information, but some more context, and I'm very thankful for that. So shoutouts to Prentendo here. At a very high level, cheating in online games is absolutely nothing new. There's a lot of cheaters for a lot of games. And some games have a lot of cheaters. And sometimes it just takes one cheater to kind of ruin the online experience for everyone. And that's kind of what happened here. Games using Prentendo are no exception to having cheaters. And Prentendo banned one console certificate from a cheater, and it turned out that 1,300 people were sharing the exact same console certificate. Now, some people may ask, why would Prentendo even care about cheaters? And I would say, why wouldn't they? Would you use an online service if you knew you were going to play an online game that was just going to be riddled with cheaters and there was no way you were going to win or really have that much fun? I guess unless you were the one doing the cheating. And the answer there is probably no. Prentendo wants people to use their service, obviously, and they want to control it and make it an enjoyable experience for everyone. So it pretty much comes down to one or two or possibly a few people who ruined it for the masses. Pretty much everyone who was sharing that exact same certificate, probably obtained from a very similar place online. And that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody who shares a certificate gets banned. It's just the more people sharing the same certificate raises the chances of one of those people cheating and ruining it for everybody. I mean, if you don't believe me, this is right from Prentendo. It should be noted that we do not immediately jump to console bans. We always start with account bans, and if we discover that a console is the source of many banned accounts, only then do we ban the actual console. So the people who are worried about us banning consoles so much that the market runs dry need not worry. Console bans are always a last resort. And furthermore, Prentendo says, as for people concerned over player counts due to the ban happened several days ago and we've had no drop in player count. In fact, it's higher than it usually is at this time. The 1,300 number came from the total number of accounts that have ever used that console. It does not actually represent 1,300 active players. It's more than likely that only a very small amount, if any, of those users were long-term active users. And finally, users who are using the shared console dumps on real hardware can simply restore their console from a backup made prior to the change, which should allow them back online again. So this really isn't a Prentendo problem, but more of a cheater problem. And I don't really think the cheaters care that they're ruining the experience for a whole bunch of people. But moving on, and if you've got an Android device with a Snapdragon CPU, you might like this piece of news here. There's a brand new Mesa Turnip driver available. So at the time of filming, Mesa Turnip driver version 24.2.0 revision 22 is the latest update. And this bumps Vulkan to version 1.3.291. Now, also something very significant to note here, they've resumed the release of weekly releases. So this is going to get updated on a very regular basis moving forward, whether it's significant or not. Moving on, and if you're a fan of Soul Reaver 1 or 2, you might be excited about this news. This was a leak over at SDCC on a display, and it says Soul Reaver 1 and 2 remastered. If you are curious about this one, I'll drop a link to the Reset Era post in the description below, and feel free to check it out. There's even some figurines here for Soul Reaver 1 and 2, and to me this is pretty exciting. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo Switch flash carts, and from my understanding there's two different types out there, the Mig Switch and the Unlock Switch, and both companies are going head to head. Both companies I don't think like each other, and both companies have kind of said some mean stuff about each other. Anyways, here Unlock Switch has sent some samples out for review. And the samples don't work. These things have red flags all over them. So over on Twitter, someone asks, will the software come out before the launch date? And Unlock Switch says yes. Honestly, that red banner on their Twitter profile seems appropriate to serve as a red flag, but I could be completely wrong about this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens here with Unlock Switch. And speaking about the Mig Switch, next up we're talking about the Mig Flash, which is the Mig Switch just with a brand new name. So the Mig Flash team says, we become Mig Flash. Reason is again the powerful lobbying, corruption in most cases, between large companies and lawmakers in certain powerful countries. We won't give any name, everyone knows. For some reason the word Switch now can't be used without the consent from the company Nintendo, even if it is just to explain a product is made for or compatible with a device made by another company. To be honest with you, I'm not surprised about the Switch name being a problem. I mean, that's a normal thing with most companies out there. You can't just go create a PlayStation Switch and expect Nintendo not to be upset with PlayStation and to file a lawsuit against them. Anyways, the Mig Flash team says, please note there is no other change beside this cosmetic one. Product is the same and work the same, new or old, provided they actually ship them to their customers, which has been a big problem and a source of many complaints for a lot of people who purchased one of these. From what I've seen out there, unlike the Unlock Switch, the Mig Flash seems to be a working product, but at the same time availability seems to be super scarce. Let me know your thoughts about Mig Flash versus Unlock Switch in the comments below. Next up, we're quickly talking about Gran Turismo, which has been talked about quite a bit online the other day due to a controversial update. So they say we are now aware of the following issue in the 1.49 update released on July 25th. Car physics simulation. Unintended vehicle behavior is produced when a particular car setting is set within car settings. The issue is currently under investigation. We apologize for any inconvenience this may be causing. And for those who may be unaware, here is the unintended issue. You can see cars launching all over the place. I think this is fantastic. If you've experienced this issue with Gran Turismo, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below, and let me know your thoughts about Gran Turismo actually fixing this. Would you rather have this setting available still for fun, or would you want it out of the game altogether? Next up, in my opinion, there may be a delay here in video games that are currently in development due to a recent strike. So the video game actors confirm a strike over AI. I'm pretty sure we've talked about these negotiations before, considering they've been going on for 18 months, and now they've announced a strike to begin on July 26th. It said here it's going to affect companies like Activision Production, Blindsight, Disney Character Voices, EA Productions, Formosa Interactive, Insomniac, Epic, Take-Two, and even more. Unfortunately, I've got no idea how long this strike is going to go on for and what's going to be the impact of the strike. But if you wanted to learn more about the whole situation, I'll drop a link to this VGC article in the description below and feel free to check it out. And speaking about checking stuff out, next up we're quickly talking about one of my favorite Linux distributions out there, and that is Linux Mint. And Linux Mint has just released Linux Mint 22, Wilma. Now, Linux Mint 22 will be supported until 2029. It's a long-term support release, and it is based on Ubuntu 24.04. It features Linux kernel 6.8. Their flagship version, which features the Cinnamon desktop environment, has Cinnamon bumped up to version 6.2. But they've also got XFCE and Mate if you want those versions instead. At this time, LMDE, which stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Linux Mint Debian Edition, is still on 6, Fey. Now, I've got a video of my favorite Linux distributions, and yes, Linux Mint is on the list. It's a fantastic distribution. It's an easy set it and forget it type of distro. On top of that, I find it great for beginners and also experienced users alike. And on top of all of that, since it's supported until 2029, you really don't have to worry about it. Next up, we're quickly talking about 7 Days to Die, which has finally got its version 1.0 release, and this is a real big one. It completely changes the game. The development team says 7 Days to Die 1.0 was over a decade in the making. The early access lasted almost 12 years. Yeah, the game's been out that long. And they say 1.0 edition brings more optimizations, polish, quality of life improvements, new content, new features, and new gameplay. And on top of that, a big benefit here if you paid for early access, but it appears the game got a little bit more expensive, or a lot more expensive. So right now it's sitting at about $58 Canadian. And for those wondering, in US dollars, it went from $24.99 to $44.99. So it took a bit of a price jump. I mean, people had 12 years to get it at the cheaper price. Let me know your thoughts about 7 Days to Die in the comments below, and I guess let me know your thoughts about the new price for it. Do you think it's now worth it? Next up, we're talking about Wolverine for PC and the unofficial PC port based on the whole Insomniac leaks. It appears the unofficial PC port is making a whole lot of progress. A bunch of videos have popped up on YouTube showcasing gameplay. Captain Gameslayer says the game is about 20% complete and they've posted a whole bunch of footage. If you are curious about this one and wanted to learn more about it, I'll drop a link to this YouTube video in the description below and feel free to check it out. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation with Ryujinx, and Ryujinx may be getting a very big improvement for Mac users. I'll drop a link to this GitHub in the description below, and it's a work in progress metal backend. And it says this PR aims to implement a fully complete metal backend, primarily targeted at Apple Silicon devices. Now again, it's worth pointing out this is currently a work in progress, but at the same time it's shaping up to be very, very promising. And if we take a look here for the perfect games, there are a bunch listed, including Super Mario Odyssey and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and even Persona 5 Royal. For partially working, there's Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, and even more. And unfortunately for rendering nothing, there is Xenoblade Chronicles and Pokemon Legends Arceus. Now again, check this one out. It is very promising. There's a lot of interesting information here, and I'm curious to see how this ends up shaping up. Next up, I've got a couple of pieces of, I guess, rapid fire news. The first one here, Fist Forged in Shadow Torches, right now free on the Epic Games Store. And secondly, the upcoming Black Myth Wukong, which I think we've talked about before, has de novo. So it appears right here on their Steam game page. I'm not sure if we talked about this game having de novo before, but I think we were expecting it. And it turns out it's true, this game does have de novo. And last up here, we're talking about SMS Co-op. SMS Co-op stands for Super Mario Sunshine Co-op, and possibly something else depending on how you want to interpret that. Anyways, SMS Co-op just released version 1.0. If you are curious about this one, I'll drop a link to it in the description below and feel free to check it out. This is a milestone release for the team. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.